20 years of glasses, and something inside your eye has supposedly been quietly wasting away. There is a little ring of muscle sitting just behind your iris. It is called the ciliary muscle. And there is a measurement, a real one, taken under a microscope back in 1992 that says this muscle shrinks. One portion of it loses more than half its bulk between the age of 30 and the age of 80. More than half. Gone. So the story writes itself, doesn't it? You put a piece of curved glass in front of your eye, the glass does the focusing, the muscle no longer has to strain. And a muscle that never strains forgets how to work. The same way your arm comes out of a cast thin and feeble after a summer of doing nothing. 20 years of a little slab of glass doing your muscle's job. 20 years of that muscle sitting there, idle inside your skull, going soft, going lazy, forgetting its trade. Now that is a beautiful argument. It is clean, it is mechanical, it fits everything you already believe about muscles and cages and laziness. And the people who tell it to you are not fools. They have got a real measurement on their side. I want you to feel how solid it is before I take a hammer to it, because I am going to take a hammer to it, and I want the swing to hurt. So let's do the thing physicists love to do, which is to actually look at the machine before we tell stories about it. What is this muscle built to do? Not what does the folklore say. What is the job? Your eye is a camera, and like any camera it has to bend light and bring it to a point on the back wall. We measure the bending power of a lens in a unit called the diopter. Never mind the exact definition, just think of it as a number that says how hard this piece of glass yanks the light inward. Your whole eye, sitting relaxed, staring off at a mountain, has a total bending power of about 60 diopters. 60. Hold on to that number. Here is the first surprise, and it is a good one. Of those 60 diopters, the muscle lens business, the part everybody frets about, is not even the star of the show. The front window of your eye, the clear dome called the cornea, that fixed, unmoving, unmuscled bit of tissue you never think about, does about 40 of those 60 diopters all by itself. 2/3 of the work. It is not adjustable. It does not flex. It just sits there being curved, bending the daylights out of the incoming light, and it never gets tired because there is nothing in it that moves. The famous lens, the crystalline lens, the soft clear bean sitting behind your iris, does the other 20 diopters or so when you are relaxed. It is a little thing. About 4 millimeters thick, front to back, about 10 millimeters across, the width of a small shirt button. And the whole relaxed eye brings the light to a focus over a distance of roughly 16.7 millimeters, which is just about the depth of the eyeball. That is the design. A big fixed lens up front doing most of the bending, and a small, soft, adjustable lens behind it doing the fine-tuning. Now the fine-tuning. This is where the muscle finally enters, and this is where the whole folk story is born, so pay attention, because the mechanism is exactly backwards from what your intuition screams. When you look at that faraway mountain, your ciliary muscle is relaxed, doing nothing. And in that relaxed state, the lens is pulled thin and flat. How? Picture a soft round bead hanging in the middle of a wheel, held in place by hundreds of tiny threads running from the rim of the wheel to the edge of the bead. Those threads are called the zonules, the suspensory fibers. The ciliary muscle is the rim of that wheel, a ring all the way around. When the muscle is relaxed, the ring is wide and open, and it pulls those threads tight, and the tight threads stretch the soft lens out flat like a drum skin. Flat lens, less bending power, sharp focus on distant things. That is your eye at rest. Now bring a book up close. To focus on something near, you need more bending power, a fatter, rounder lens. So what does the muscle do? It contracts. And here is the trick that fools everyone. When this ring-shaped muscle contracts, it gets smaller in diameter, like a drawstring pulling a pouch closed. The ring shrinks inward. And when the ring shrinks inward, it stops pulling on those threads. The threads go slack. And the moment the threads go slack, the lens, which is elastic and desperately wants to be round, springs into a fat, bulging, powerful shape all on its own. Its own stretchy capsule molds it round. The muscle didn't squeeze the lens. the muscle let go, and the lens rounded itself. Feel how strange that is. When you strain to read fine print in dim light, when your eye is working its hardest, the muscle is contracting, yes, but the effect it produces is a release. And when you rest your eyes on the horizon, the muscle is idle, but the lens is being held under tension by those tight little threads. Contraction means near. Relaxation means far. This one muscle has exactly one move, tighten the ring, and gravity, or rather elasticity, does the rest. That is called accommodation. The eye accommodating itself to different distances. And a young eye is spectacular at it. That soft young lens can go from about 20 diopters flat to as much as 33 diopters when fully rounded up. That is a huge swing of focusing power on demand. A whole camera's worth of adjustable lens packed into a bead the size of a shirt button, driven by a ring of muscle you cannot even feel working. So now, armed with a real machine, let's go back and make the muscle atrophy story as strong as it can possibly be, because a good argument deserves an honest fight. If this muscle is a muscle like your bicep, then a muscle that works should stay strong, and a muscle that idles should decay. Fine. Let's look for the decay. And boy, do we find it. Take a 20-year-old. Ask this young person to hold a page of print and bring it closer and closer to the eye until the letters just begin to blur. The nearest spot where they can still hold it sharp we call the near point. For a 20-year-old, the near point sits at about 10 centimeters from the eye. 10 centimeters. They can hold the print almost against their nose and still snap it into focus. That is a young, powerful, athletic lens and muscle system flexing its full range. Now take a 50-year-old and run the identical test. Their near point is not at 10 centimeters. It has drifted out to about 50 centimeters. Half a meter. They are holding the menu out at arm's length in the restaurant, tilting it toward the candle, because anything closer is a fog. In 30 years, the reachable near distance has marched from 10 centimeters out to 50. The focusing range has collapsed. If that is not a muscle wasting away from disuse, what on earth is it? And it gets more damning, because this decline is not random. It is a law. Back in 1950, a fellow named Hofstadter wrote down a little formula that predicts your focusing power from nothing but your age. Take the number 18.5 and subtract 3/10 times your age in years. That is roughly the bending swing in diopters that your eye can still muster. Plug in 20 years old and you get a big healthy number. Plug in 50 and it has fallen off a cliff. There are companion formulas for the best case and the worst case, an upper line and a lower line, and almost everybody's real focusing power lies in the band between them. It is that regular. It is that predictable. Push the formula out and the news gets grim. By around 45 or 50 years old, the total focusing swing you have left drops under 2 diopters for very nearly everybody. By 70, it is down to about a single diopter. One lonely diopter out of a young eye's dozen plus. This has a name, this near universal drying up of the eye's focus. We call it presbyopia, the old eye. And notice, it comes for everyone. The farmer who never read a book, the scholar who read 10,000, the fighter pilot with legendary eyesight. Every one of them riding the same curve down, arriving at the same reading glasses at the same age, give or take. So here is the muscle atrophy story, now armored to the teeth. A muscle that flexes stays young. Glasses take away the flexing. The near point retreats, the focusing power drains away on a fixed schedule, and it all fits Hofstadter's tidy little line. It looks airtight. It looks like the kind of thing you could put in a textbook and never question. 20 years of glasses, a lazy idle muscle, a measurable collapse of focusing power. Case closed. Except it is not closed, because every single piece of evidence I just handed you has a crack running through it, and once you see the first crack, the whole beautiful structure starts to come apart in your hands. Let me show you the first one, and I promise you it is not where you are looking. Here is the first crack, and it lives inside a single person. Picture somebody whose 2 eyes are not the same. One eye is quite nearsighted and wears a strong correction. The other eye is only mildly nearsighted and wears a weak one. This is not rare. Doctors have a name for it, anisometropia, and all it means is that your left and right eyes carry different prescriptions. Now stop and think about what the muscle atrophy story must predict here. The strong eye gets a powerful glass doing more of the focusing work for it. By the lazy muscle logic, that eye's focusing muscles should be loafing harder, wasting away faster, shrinking more than its partner. Two muscles, same skull, same age, same blood, same brain. The only difference is how much glass sits in front of each. It is the cleanest little experiment nature ever handed us, and you did not even have to build it. So somebody went and looked. In the year 2013, they took 29 adults. Average age about 28, every one of them with mismatched eyes, and they imaged the ciliary muscle directly. Not guessed at it. Not inferred it from a reading chart. They used optical coherence tomography, which is a way of shining light in and getting back a cross-section picture of the living tissue right there inside the working eye. They measured the muscle in the strong prescription eye. They measured the muscle in the weak prescription eye. Same person, side by side. And the difference in thickness between the hard-working eye and the coddled eye was statistically nothing. No significant difference at all. The muscle behind the strong glass was not a wilted little thing next to a hero on the other side. They were twins. Sit with how strange that is for the story we built. If glasses starve a muscle into atrophy, the one place on earth you would see it screaming is inside a person wearing two different strengths. And it is not there. It is simply not there. Now, a good skeptic does not throw out a whole theory over one study, and neither will I. Maybe you say the effect is real but slow, and 28-year-olds are too young to show it. Fair. So let us go find the muscle at the other end of life, the muscle that has supposedly been idling behind glass for 40, 50, 60 years. If disuse withers it, an old ciliary muscle should be a ruin. They looked at that too. In the year 2016 there was a study with a title that gives away the ending. Something to the effect that the focusing muscle's function is preserved in older humans. They put aging eyes under the scope and asked the muscle to do its job, to contract, and the muscle contracted. It still had its strength. The old ciliary muscle, decades into its supposed retirement, could still pull. So then where on earth does the lost focusing power go? If the motor still runs, why can a person of 50 no longer read the label on a jar held up close? And here is where the whole thing quietly turns over. The power was never lost in the muscle. It was lost in the lens. Remember what the muscle actually does. It does not focus the eye by brute force. It relaxes the little guy wires, the zonules, and lets the soft, springy lens round itself up into a fatter, stronger shape. The entire trick depends on the lens being willing to change shape. It depends on the lens being soft. And the one thing that happens to that lens, relentlessly, year after year, in every human being who has ever lived, is that it hardens. It stiffens like a gummy candy left out on the counter. The muscle tugs on the strings exactly as it always did. The strings go slack exactly as before, and the lens just sits there, too stiff to bulge. You can have the strongest hand in the world, but if you are squeezing a rock instead of a sponge, nothing rounds up. That is presbyopia. It is a hardening lens, not a fainting muscle. And notice, please notice, that it has absolutely nothing to do with whether you ever wore glasses. Glass in front of the eye cannot reach in and keep a lens soft. Nobody's spectacles ever touch that lens. But I told you the theory would come apart in your hands, and I want to show you it doing exactly that, contradicting its own self. There was a review, quite recent, that gathered up what different scientists had actually measured about the aging focusing muscle, and the measurements do not even agree with each other. One older study, from 1992, reported that a certain part of the ciliary muscle, the long stretched out portion, shrank by more than half between age 30 and age 80. Wonderful, says the atrophy believer. There it is, the muscle wastes away, I was right. Not so fast. Newer imaging, better tools, looked at the same muscle across ages and found the opposite. The muscle gets thicker with age. Thicker, not thinner. It bulks up. It remodels itself. the way a body part under changing demands quietly rebuilds. Now which is it? A muscle cannot be both shriveling to half and thickening at the same time, so what is going on? What is going on is that a muscle is not a balloon that simply inflates or deflates. It is a living, changing tissue. Look inside it, and you find it swapping out its own fibers with age. The fast, sprinting kind of muscle fiber becomes rarer, and the slow, patient, tireless kind becomes more common, the endurance fibers, the ones that can hold a gentle contraction all day without fatigue. And the connective tissue, the non-muscle scaffolding woven through it, climbs from about 1/5 of a certain region in your 30s to about 1/2 of it in your 50s. So the tissue is genuinely transforming. But here is the sentence that kills the whole lazy muscle sermon. Through all of that remodeling, the measured force the muscle can produce shows no considerable decline. It changes its character. It does not lose its strength. This is not the biography of a muscle rotting from disuse. This is the biography of a muscle adapting, staying in the game, holding its power while the world around it, the lens turns to stone. So we have to be honest and admit the case is not merely unproven. It is standing on evidence that points the other way. The one clean natural experiment says the loafing muscle is the same size as the working one. The direct look at old eyes says the muscle still contracts. The lost focusing power traces to a stiffening lens that no eyeglass could ever have caused or prevented. And the muscle's own tissue is thickening and retooling, not withering. Every armored plate we bolted onto the atrophy story has fallen off. The muscle was never the villain. The muscle's fine, which leaves us standing in the wreckage with a real and much better question. If 20 years of glasses did not soften a muscle, then when somebody's prescription gets stronger and stronger over those years, and it very often does, what is actually changing? Something is getting worse. The numbers on the little card from the eye doctor really do climb. If it is not the muscle going soft, what is it? Here is the answer, and it is almost comically simple, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Nearsightedness, the ordinary kind that starts in childhood and creeps stronger through the school years, is not a problem of focusing power at all. It is a problem of shape. It is a problem of length. The nearsighted eye is too long. The eyeball, front to back, grows a little too far, and when an eyeball is too long, the sharp image that the cornea and lens work so hard to form lands not on the retina at the back, but slightly in front of it, in the jelly, and by the time the light actually reaches the retina, it has smeared back out into a blur. That is all myopia is at bottom, a perfectly good lens system focusing perfectly into an eyeball that has overshot its own optics. You are not looking at a weak muscle. You are looking at a stretched globe. And a stretched globe is exactly the kind of thing a glass in front of your face cannot pump up or shrink down. The spectacle bends the incoming light a little earlier, so the focus lands farther back, on the retina, sharp again. It is a patch over the geometry. It does nothing to the length of the eye, one way or the other. So the real story of 20 years of getting stronger glasses is not a muscle going lazy behind them. It is an eyeball that kept very slightly growing in the wrong direction, and the glasses simply kept redrawing the map to match. Now that only pushes the mystery back one step, and it is the right step to be standing on. Why would an eyeball grow to the wrong length? Bones do not do this. Your femur does not just keep lengthening because you looked at it wrong. Why should the eye? And the answer is one of the loveliest pieces of biology in the whole body, because it turns out the eye is not just a passive camera that happens to come out the size it comes out. The growing eye watches its own picture, and it adjusts its own length to make that picture sharp. It has a built-in thermostat for focus. They call it emmetropization, an ugly word for a beautiful idea. As a child's eye grows, the retina is reading the blur. It is using the way light lands, whether it is focusing a hair in front or a hair behind, as a signal. And it uses that signal to tell the back wall of the eye, the sclera, how much to remodel, whether to keep stretching or to ease off, so that the length of the eyeball creeps toward a perfect match with the focusing power sitting up front. When it works, and for most of human history it mostly worked, the eye grows into exactly the right size and the picture is sharp for free. Nobody designed it. The eye tuned itself, using its own vision as the ruler. But a thermostat is only as good as what it is reading, and this one can be fooled. And here is where somebody always raises a hand and says, well, if near work fools the thermostat, and glasses are for near work, then surely the honest thing to do is take the glasses off. Let the eye rest. Let it strain a little, work a little, toughen up, go without. It sounds like exercise. It sounds like virtue. It is exactly the sort of story we love to tell ourselves, and it happens to be backwards. Somebody actually checked. They took 94 nearsighted children, all of them between 9 and 14 years old, right in the thick of the years when a young eye is still growing and still deciding how long to be. They split them into two groups. One group got glasses that corrected them fully, sharp as you please. The other group, 47 of them, got glasses deliberately made a little too weak, undercorrected by about 3/4 of a diopter, just enough to leave the world a bit soft, a bit blurred. The rest of your eyes theory makes a clean prediction here. The blurry group is straining less, leaning on the lens less, so their eyes should hold steady, maybe even improve. That is the whole folk wisdom in one testable sentence. They followed those children for 2 years. And the group left blurry did not hold steady. They got worse. Faster. Their eyeballs stretched out longer, and they turned more nearsighted than the children who wore the full honest correction the entire time. Not a tie. Not a wash. The undercorrected kids lost the race, and the numbers were strong enough that you could not wave them away as luck. The deliberate blur, the thing that was supposed to be gentle on the eye, was the thing that pushed it to grow. Now, one study is one study, and I am the last person who will tell you to bet the farm on a single result. So look wider. Pool the trials together, all the ones where children were left a little undercorrected, and on average those children came out about 15/100ths of a diopter more myopic than the fully corrected ones. A small number, yes, but it points the wrong way for the theory. It points at worse, not better. And the newer, carefully controlled trials of mild undercorrection, half a diopter, 3/4 of a diopter, over a year and a half or two, keep landing in the same place. Either it made the myopia progress faster, or it did precisely nothing good. Nobody has found the promised benefit, because it was never there. Turn it around the other way, and the picture gets even clearer. There was a big careful trial, 469 children, all of them tracked for 3 years, testing a special lens. Not weaker. Different. A progressive lens that changes power from top to bottom so that when the child looks down to read, the eye does not have to strain the same way for near. If focusing effort were the villain, easing that effort should help. And it did help. A little. It slowed the nearsightedness by about 2/10ths of a diopter, and it slowed the stretching of the eyeball by about 11/100ths of a millimeter over those 3 years. Modest. But real. And notice what did the work. Not muscle exercise. Not toughening anything up. It was the optical input, the shape of the blur landing on the retina, the very signal the thermostat reads. You do not train this system like a bicep. You feed it a better picture, and it grows a little straighter. So the whole muscle story, the lazy focuser gone soft after 20 years of leaning on a crutch, has quietly turned into ash in our hands. The muscle stays strong. The lens stiffens on its own clock, the same clock for everyone. The eyeball changes length according to a feedback loop that answers to light, not to effort. And going without your correction, the supposed cure, is if anything a mild accelerant. I want to be honest about the one place there is a real crack of daylight, because a good story does not hide its exceptions. There is a difference between wearing no glasses and wearing the wrong glasses. Going without full correction is one thing, but putting the incorrect prescription on someone, the wrong power, the wrong axis, that is not harmless. That can give you strain, headaches, tired, aching eyes by afternoon. And in a growing child, the wrong optical signal is exactly the kind of thing that can nudge that thermostat off course and speed the nearsightedness along. So the careful statement is not glasses never matter. It is that the correct glasses do not weaken your eye, and the wrong glasses can genuinely hurt. Your prescription creeps up over the years? Yes. But it creeps because of your age, your parents, and how you spend your days close up or out in the light. The lens on your nose is a witness to that change. It is not the cause of it. Step back now, all the way back, and look at the whole species at once, because this is where it stops being a private worry and becomes something enormous. At the turn of the century, around the year 2000, roughly 23 out of every 100 people on Earth were nearsighted. 20 years on, by 2020, it was about 34 out of 100. And the modeling that the health people lean on says that by 2050, it will be around half. Half of everyone. Something like 1 in 5 of those with the heavy, deep nearsightedness carrying a real risk of the kind of damage that steals sight for good. That is not a rounding error. That is a wave rolling across a whole planet inside a single lifetime. And here is the thing that should stop you cold. That wave is not made of glasses. It climbed just as steeply among people who never wore correction as among people who did. It clusters where children spend their days indoors, bent over close work, out of the sunlight. In some places, nearly 90 out of 100 young people are nearsighted now. In others, fewer than 10. Same human eyes, same muscles, same lenses. What differs is how those eyes were raised, what they looked at, how much daylight they drank in while they were still growing. The genes load the gun, and the childhood of near work and dim indoor light pulls the trigger, and the glasses, the poor blamed glasses, are just standing there afterward, holding the corrected picture steady so the person can see. There are still puzzles in here, and I will not pretend otherwise. Across different people, a thicker patch of ciliary muscle toward the back seems to travel with more nearsightedness, and a thicker tip with the opposite, farsightedness. Is that a cause? A consequence? A footprint left by an eyeball that changed shape and dragged the muscle's geometry along with it? We are not sure. The measurements disagree from lab to lab, from one group of people to another. That is what an honest edge of knowledge looks like. Not a clean answer. A place where the map still says, here we are still drawing, but the big shape of it is not in doubt anymore. Picture that person again, the one told their eye muscles went soft after 20 years behind a pair of lenses. Every piece of that sentence has come apart in our hands. The focusing muscle inside their eye is still perfectly able to pull. It never wasted away. The stiffness they feel reaching for the newspaper is the lens quietly hardening on the same schedule as everyone who never owned a pair of glasses in their life. And whatever nearsightedness they carry lives in the length of the eyeball itself, a shape settled largely in childhood, by light and growth and inheritance, long before the glasses ever arrived. The correction was never a weight training a lazy muscle. It was never doing anything to the muscle at all. For 20 years they thought they were watching their eyes grow weak behind the glass. They were only ever watching the glass hold still, while the real thing, the small round chamber that carries the whole picture of the world, went on quietly being exactly what it had already become.